and get us started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. This meeting is an important one, not just because of where we are in our funding cycle generally, but because we're sort of marking this moment of continuity and evolution for the table, as well as looking at what's happening on our funding landscape for all of us across the county. So before I got started, I thought I'd let Heather give a bit of I know she has a little bit of something that she'd like to say to you folks, so I thought we'd start there.
Okay, sounds good. I feel like there are a few of you that I'm really just starting to get to know, and I just wanted to connect and also to just share. And Lori referenced an evolution of this table that I know has been a little bit coming with many changes, but we have a particular one that I wanted to let you know about right from the beginning. And then you'll see at the end of the agenda that we also have just sort of a looking ahead opportunity to talk about how this table may continue to evolve. But I wanted to share with you that Lori, after over 15 years doing and working in this role and lots of others, has let us know that she's needing to move on. And so she is going to stay with us and try to kind of wrap up some of the work of the BHC so that we can really have a thoughtful process about what happens with the BHC next post the Lori Fleming era. And all the great work that she has brought to this community through her work in public health and certainly in the behavioral health sphere. So I wonder, Jim, if you might want to just take a minute, or Apple, to just share a little bit about Lori's accomplishments and her work here.
I'll let you go first, Apple.
Oh, thanks, Jim. You're a buddy.
You both unmuted at the same time.
Yeah, we did. Well, it's big news, and digesting it is, we're all among friends. I know every one of you, and we've been through a lot together, and we're currently in a financial landscape that's pretty challenging and, leaves quite a bit of room for despair, as if you didn't already have some. And we all do super hard work. Lori's been a huge part of this sort of big muscle that, extends across Jefferson County. We're a small county with kind of a very small population, but we have a really mighty sense of, wanting to extend to one another, wanting to know one another, and wanting to do good by the people here. We have a super unique set of communities here that I think everybody on this table has either a lifetime or at least a professional lifetime of contribution to. And we're really immersed in the day-to-day of people's suffering and also of people's, deserved dignity, and also wanting to be sure that all the good work we do is as accessible to as many people who need and deserve it as is possible. I could talk for the next till 4:30 about sort of the history and overlap with Lori and my time with her at public health, and then now the years, I can't believe that's plural, beyond public health, where she has, done masterful work with each and every one of us, but also always dedicated to the larger system. And I feel that everyone on this call works in those parallel universes. You work very hard on your own body of work that you and your organization is an expert at, and then you also work very hard to get along with others and to share ideas and to show up every time and let people know things and coordinate and connect. And those are two very strong parallel features of leadership. And I think everybody at this table feels and understands that. I'm grappling with Lori leaving this table. And at the same time, I feel like the arc is quite nuanced, but also complete in its own way. And there's a little bit of cosmicness going on in my mind in the background, and that might sound kind of woo-woo, but there's been many iterations of what's meaningful in this work. And I had, the great fortune to be around Lori and learn from her while she was here at Public Health. And I even was her boss for a little while, which had, had its own intensity and meaningfulness. And we've seen partners come and go. We've seen funds come and go. We've seen an enormous HRSA grant, which was a huge undertaking. And I remember the first day, Lori, that you announced that we'd gotten this $1 million grant. And you announced it at a staff meeting with Public Health. I feel like it's yesterday that I heard that, but yet it was over 4 years ago. So we've done a lot together, and I will say it again. I said it at her sort of going away celebration from Public Health when she left to work elsewhere, and it really is an artful thing that's happened here, and the intention. It's not always easy. There's politics and money and interpersonal relationships involved. But it's pretty masterful, the kind of creator that Lori is. And I mean that in a lot of ways. Her content, her ideas, her way that she speaks with people and is curious about how to make people have better connections on behalf of the folks that we serve. So I could talk a long time about it, but your arc with me personally is a big one, and I honor that fully for all of its intricacies. And I don't know if you're going to stick around, but I hope that you really excel at what the next thing is, and I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Apple. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything to add working together in this role with the BHC?
You talking to me?
To you, Jim.
Are you
Yeah.
talking to me? Are you talking to me?
So I'm kind of speechless. This has been hard to grapple with, as a good word, I guess, grapple, and to think about. I've not known Lori as long as Apple has. It's been going on, 6 years? Seems like only yesterday, but I've known, Lori as from her time on the board of DBH board. And I watched her grow through that process in the sense of understanding behavioral health and what it meant, and how it affects the community. And then throughout that whole process, and when she left the board, I felt a sense of loss then. But at least with the BHC table, I felt a sense of renewal that she really brought something to the community that was different than what she was at Public Health. It was a new beginning, in that sense. And the BHC really became this table that was there for the community to really look at gaps, things that are missing. How can we fill services? It was a work that we really didn't know what direction it was going to go with from the beginning and how it was going to pan out. And I think it's moved in a direction that's pretty amazing, considering we're now facing a situation of uncertainty with finances. What's happening, not only from the state, but mostly from the feds, really. What's that going to look like? And I think it's so important now to realize that this creation that really was birthed under Lori, I mean, putting this table together, keeping us together, may be so much more important now to figure out, as if funding sources become tight, what do we do? How do we fill the gaps? How do we serve the community? And this table has always been about what's best for the community, not what's best for each of us at the table, but more about the sense of wholeness, of really what do we bring to the table that we can help the community get their needs met. Well, each of us have different roles of this. Each of us have different expectations, but at the same time, it's a place to come together and say, we have a gap here, we have a gap here. Let's try to find out how to solve this. And I think I've just always been amazed how Lori can take all these people sitting here in this table and pull it together to make sense of what we talk about. Because I could probably babble here too, but I mean, just to be able to coalesce everything we put at this. And I read the minutes that she puts together, and I said, we really said that? Is this the way we went? And it is amazing that she can really read us and really be able to make sense of those things. And I feel that her leaving is, I guess, good for her, because she's ready for her next step, her next venture. But I don't know if we're all ready for that. And I don't know if we ever will be, because she's been so integral and such a part of what we do. I will, hope the best there, and hopefully she doesn't leave us and goes on to something good for the community. I don't know what that may be, but I got to thank her, and I think we owe her all a great debt of gratitude and respect for everything she's done for this community. That's where I'm at.
Thank
For
you.
those comments. So I want to just kind of turn the agenda back to Lori here in just a minute, but just to say that the convening that has happened here, and coming from the housing world and understanding how important this connection is I hope that we can really look at some productive next steps for moving this forward together in a new way. We will have some time at the end of the meeting to talk about a few things that we already have in the works to try to get your input into how you want to move forward together. And I look forward to a robust conversation about that. Thank you so much for all that you have done and will continue to do in the community, I'm sure, Lori.
Thank you all. It's an honor to work with you and to be with you in the way that we have been over the years. And true to form, we have a lot to cover in this meeting. So I'm going to turn us quickly to our meeting packet. I'm just going to share my screen here quickly. Can everybody see the links in the chat in case you want to go look at something specifically, like the meeting packet, etc.? All right. So today we're going to review funding and budget currently, and a few shared accomplishments just to ground us together. And then one of the big things that I'd like to get accomplished together is to review and triage sort of our evolving funding landscape. And a little bit later, we'll sort of give you some time to look at a Padlet that I've put together that gives you a chance to give us some specifics around what's happening in your little corner of the world so that we can look at it sort of as a collective for a few minutes. And while we might not be able to act on it right now, we will have at least gathered that information in one place. And then we'll move on. Commissioner Dudley-Nollette is going to lead us in a little bit of an overview of the urban rest stop discussion that's been going on, and give folks a chance to get brought up to speed there. And then we'll go back to that discussion about what the next steps might be for the BHC. Any questions there before are you guys looking at my screen or are you looking at yourselves? You're looking at okay. So you can see here the BHC statements. Is that true? That's what you're looking at? I can't tell on my screen. Okay. These are all statements that we agreed on together, so I feel like you have a good platform there for whatever you do next. I think you were very clear about what you wanted to do at that table, at least at that time. It'll be a good trampoline if you decide to evolve it at all from where we got to there at the end of last year. In terms of our spending and an overview, since we've been getting opioid abatement funds, this is how it's been distributed so far, and this is what the remaining amount is. And then I'm just going to take you to the next sheet that gives you a little more of a breakdown and give folks a chance to ask questions, have a look. I'm sure this is very small. Does that help? Otherwise, it's in your package if you need to bring it up bigger. I think one of the things that I wanted to just point out here, we have gotten the 2024 funds. As they came in, once the amount was, there's a certain amount of funding or administrative costs that comes off the top for SBHASO, which is well deserved. I know there's a lot of work in getting all these funds distributed where they need to go. The amount that we ended up bringing in was this $52,681 amount, and it is a shortfall of what we had budgeted for last year that we thought was going to come in. And I can come back to the slide, but I just want to give you a quick overview. These are the amounts that we were expecting. There was a $19,770 that was a future payment that somebody decided to pay early. If you subtracted the 10% SBHASO fee, this is what we would have expected. This is what we actually got, and this is the shortfall. And this also gives you a list of, in the future years, at least at this moment, what we think will be coming in from the opioid settlement funds. And you should always keep in mind that these, even if it is this amount, there is still a 10% that needs to come off to go to SBH ASO. And that 19,000 that somebody paid in advance, it comes then out of the year where it was originally intended to be paid. And now that I've just made that as complicated as I could, Heather, go ahead with your question.
I'm thinking this current opioid settlement funds slide, that's not in our packet, is it? I'm looking for it in the actual packet.
It is.
Is it where?
Maybe
which
try
page is it?
clicking on the link. You might have an earlier packet. Try clicking on the link in the
Okay.
chat. Is that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's exactly it. I pulled open. I already had opened this before I got to the meeting, so I
Okay.
must be looking at an old one. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Look at the new one.
Thank you, Heather, for that question. Let's get us all oriented, so at least we're looking at the slide. Are there any other questions? Apple?
Yeah, not to go against what you said a minute ago, which is that the Salish BH ASO does a ton of work to try to help get these complicated, sort of fussy funds into the region and then into the counties. And it's a slow process and they have to wrangle with it for sure. But I wondered, there is this rule with the 10% off the top that the Salish BH ASO will give you back whatever of that 10% they don't use in a year. Is that applied here or has it not been applicable here?
I'll tell you, it was really complicated for me to understand at all what funds got apportioned where. And I'm not saying that it's not available, but I can say that I don't know the detail of it.
Okay.
And if anybody else does, I welcome knowing that, and I'm happy to put that out there once I'm connected to it.
Okay, fair enough. I had that same question and there was some kickback from Salish BHA. So of the 10% for the other funds that aren't on this page. And so I was hoping that if that were the case in this distributor lane, if you will, that you'd receive that. But again, the process even for them turning around what wasn't used of the 10% is its own process. So
It's its own process.
these things take time.
Yeah, and I can say, as far as the money that's come funneled through us, I have not seen that 10%.
Okay.
So I don't think it's kind of kept true to this, except for the last payment that was mine didn't come through. That at 58, it ended up being 52 instead. So, yeah.
I want to thank you, Jim. I want to go back to this slide quickly and say what you don't see in here that I was just thinking about in the middle of the night last night. Before I go, I think it would be perhaps useful for us to spend some money to get another run of yellow cards done, even if we aren't out yet or close to out yet. I think just having that on a reserve might be handy for folks. Which means I may be reaching out to see if you have any edits, and certainly if you have some that you can think of right now, feel free to pop them in the chat or send me an email, and we'll get out the best version of it that we can. So you've got another set of it before I go. Any other questions around budget or expenditures?
Lori, quick question. I see website stuff on here. Is that a outward-facing website, or is that just like document storage of all these links and references and excellent data?
We have a forward-facing website that is in progress. I was sort of waiting to actually unveil it. I mean, you guys have seen previews of it, but I was waiting until our governance was complete and our MOU, so that it was one full representation of our identity. I will certainly make it available and am here to talk about how to do whatever last little updates need to be done to it. But it exists. It is paid for through September, I think, maybe even December. I'll go and check that to make sure what the timelines are and make sure that passwords and all of that are in this document that I'm preparing. That's sort of the handover of things that are apropos to the BHC. Good question. Thank you.
And just for some transparency, so the funds that Lori has up there, Lori just sent the invoice to us through the end of April. And if we take April out of that, what's left over right now is $23,284, something like that. So after we pay the April invoice, so if May is the same amount, it would bring the thing down to $16,784 if we, finalize payment to Lori for her last month. So kind of rough numbers, not knowing the exact amounts. So
Jim and I will look closely at that. We're going to look closely at it, but what Jim is saying is the lowest that we think it's going to be.
right.
But there will be some money left. You're not going to
Yeah.
be left bare. You'll still be able to do yellow cards for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, and Lori, maybe identify, if you haven't already, or say it again, what year of the distributor funds we are actually in. It can be hard to
Yes.
to deduce that.
Here is my understanding of it. I'm open to being corrected. My understanding is that these funds here came in for 23. Maybe they were 2022 and 23.
Yeah.
At the time they got dispersed, but they were dispersed in one felt swoop, this 96,000. And then this 52,000, I think, is for 2024. And
Right.
and so it may well be March or later. I think it can be complicated to get those funds moved from state to SBHASO to county. So in terms of predicting when you'll have what funds, I think you should look at least March of next year for another influx of whatever that amount is going to be.
Yeah, you read my mind. That was sort of the
Yeah.
lead on question, reason I asked it. And I don't know if what you just said is the absolute truth, because like you, everything you just said on the sort of trajectory is what I would have guessed you would say. So I feel like we're thinking about it similarly. But again, it's another indication of even when you're immersed in these funds, it can be, yeah,
It's murky. Yeah.
it's murky.
Heather?
That 52,000 looks like it came in March of 2025, you think is for 2024. Does that mean we're anticipating additional dollars to come in for 2024, or is that all, or do you think that's everything that will come in for 2024?
Well, I thought that there was going to be more, as is evidenced by the shortfall, but the amount doesn't match up with anything that gives me any reason to understand how it isn't that much to begin with. It's not 19,000 minus 10% that we're missing. It's some odd amount. And so,
Okay.
and I don't think it's that anybody is, futzing with these numbers with bad intention. I think it's been a very confusing process.
Okay, well, I'm on the SBHASO board, so I can certainly ask that question and see if we can get some clarity.
So
Right.
that amount kind of hit the county somewhere in around December, I believe, because I was trying to figure out when we were going to get it in January. And I know I worked with Judy Shepard and trying to figure out the monies because it was so confusing. Because it was this kind of group of dollars that came in. So I assume since it came in late 24, it might have been meant for 25. I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'm on the same wavelength as Lori and Apple that probably the next time we see money might not be until 2026.
Right.
It just depends how the ASO kind of gets it and sends it out. And yeah, it's
Okay. Other questions before we move on? Keeping track of the time. Shared accomplishments, I'm not going to spend any time on this, but if anybody wonders what we've been doing over the last however many years, we brought in funding. We were able to support some great programs. I think we came together as a group and learned a lot about each other. We also were together during COVID, and I think that was a good time for us to have this table. We have in progress right now, the governance related pieces, the vision, mission, and strategy are finalized. We've got some draft governance frameworks and proposed voting models that are, I think as we get the BHC/BHAC memorandum of understanding together, there is a whole group of things that can get finalized, put in writing, put on the website, et cetera, et cetera. And then the data alignment, which is a piece of sort of us assessing how effective we are at this table with the initiatives that we do, and perhaps with how we're using the funding overall in terms of opioid abatement funds. That was something I think that we were going to delve into a little more deeply as we were working that definition of the MOU between the BHAC and the BHC. So it isn't that anybody's been standing down on getting those metrics defined. It just felt like there was A, B, and C that needed to happen before we could get to the D, that is data. And I will say this over and over again. I think at the maybe one of the biggest shared accomplishments is that we have this foundation that we've set of cross-sector potential for trust and collaboration. Moving on to the funding landscape. As we know, state budgets are in the process of being finalized. We've got some new funding realities unfolding, not just state funding wise, but national funding, and just opportunities that were there that weren't, or maybe new opportunities that we weren't aware of. And this quickly changing landscape is one of the reasons why I wanted us to sort of lay down for each of us the things that we're seeing that are either needing to be cut or that we're perhaps wonderfully being surprised there's funding for that we didn't expect. So today we're going to start mapping the what's shifting and the what's needed. And the way that I would like us to think about this, it's really easy to go into a sense of urgency and panic instead of a sense of agency. When we talk about funding sort of being lost, it can be an existential crisis for some or many of us. So I would like us, as we're having this discussion, as we're putting all of our different specifics into this Padlet, that in the face of funding shifts and disruption, we want to be thinking about how we exercise steady leadership, certainly within our own organizations and across this county as county leadership members, where we honor our commitment to the communities that we serve and the future that we're trying to build together for this behavioral health system that we've been working on together for these last few years. So that is the mentality I'd like us to go into it. And now, if you, can everybody see the links in the chat? Let me just paste them and get again in case you came in after. I posted them last. There is a link to a Padlet there where I would like you to, for the programs that you are aware of that have changes, I'd like to know sort of where the funding was coming from and the nature of the change. You've got funding that has gone away, perhaps. You know that as a result of that, there's going to be an impact, and I'd like to have some sense from you what that impact is going to be, what % of that program's total budget is affected, and any immediate impact, like you know you're going to have to not serve as many meals at the Recovery Cafe or whatever the impact might be. And then lastly, I'd love for you to talk about or just give a short if there's any support or collaboration that would help. So I'm going to go quickly here to the Padlet. Now, I'm putting this on your screen so you can see it, but you are going to need to click on the actual link and actually go into it on your computer in order to add any information. So is everybody able to go get into the Padlet? Okay, I'm just looking and I'm seeing that Brett Black is saying that he's got a fire and he had to go. Maybe I'll circle back to him and ask if somebody in his organization could go into this Padlet and add his information as well, or not his, but EJFR's information. So to add a section in here, you just put the subject, and you can put the name of the program or whatever in the subject. And in here, you can start putting any of these bits of information noted over here in the guide that will help us give an overview of what's going on. Are there any questions? Heather?
Are you going to keep this open after the
Yes.
meeting too, Lori, for a bit?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going
I
to
think
oh, go ahead.
obviously for me, I won't be, I'm just listening here and finding ways that I can support, but I can also reach out and find out, for example, about the therapeutic courts program and, housing providers that aren't here today. It can just try to do a little outreach to make sure we're capturing the whole system. That's useful.
I'm really grateful that we've got county leadership eyes on this as it unfolds, because I think it's great for you to see and know what's unfolding here on the landscape as well. So thank you, Heather.
You bet.
Lori, I have a tactical question. On my Padlet, therapeutic court is, I can only see half of the tab, like it
Oh,
page ends. So I don't know. I don't
if
see,
you go down to the bar that's at the bottom, it
Yeah.
will.
I don't have a bar. I wonder what yours does. I see on your screen.
Huh.
Can you
Mine's,
just bring your cursor down to the bottom, Apple, and see if anything appears?
yeah, it's not doing that. Anyway, it looks like how many more things are to the right there? If you wouldn't mind scrolling over there.
Sure. You've got therapeutic court and then additional programs, because
Okay,
if people had something that didn't go
okay. I
under.
think I'll stay over on the more left hand side where I can see and know that I'm not missing anything in my purview that's over on the right side.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. We'll see.
Sounds
Apple,
good.
this is David Carwell. I'm on a Mac, and so I'm using sort of my secondary scrolling on my mouse to get that too. I don't have the bar, and so I don't know if you have like a two-finger scrolling option. Also, if you wanted to go right, that might get you there.
Oh, Apple
That's
has.
that's cool. My name is Apple, but I don't have a Mac. Haha. I'm on a PC as usual. Thank you though for that suggestion.
Yeah, there. I don't know if there's a secondary scrolling option. And then Lori, for my role as the medical program director of EMS, I actually don't really control any funds. Was there anything in particular I could do to be most helpful?
You know what? If you are aware of programs that perhaps intersect with what you're doing, but you don't know the details of it, if you at least put the program in there, we can go track down whatever it is that we think should be.
Got it. And I'll write a little bit about state funding of EMS stuff then also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Lori, is there any reason not to put comments about potential federal restructuring that affects some, let's say, physical health programming, at least from my perspective? Is that worthy of this particular Padlet?
Oh, I think it is anything that will give, anything that will give us an overview that helps us think more critically, because eventually we're going to look at this and say, okay, if something had to drop off, what are the things that we must keep? What are so any information that will help us make that assessment.
Thanks.
I love somebody's name is Brave Otter.
That's nice.
I'm looking to see, we don't have any law enforcement here either, do we? Today.
I thought I saw Chief Olson earlier, maybe not. Maybe he was here and then had to go.
I did see Olson, and you're right, I think he's not here now.
Just so you know, Lori, I'm going to send a message to James Kennedy and Rebecca Marriott to try to capture any impacts to therapeutic courts right now.
I'm going to give a few more minutes. If the Brave Otter person had any more comments about the impact of the real program being cut by 20%, does that mean you'll be out there less days or that you'll have to lay people off? I think that might be helpful. And then Gabby, yes, good. If you knew anything about the CARES program, if that's impacted.
I have a lot to say about a lot of these things, but I just figured out how to get the Padlet opened. So
It'll,
Well, we can
You'll
be
be able to.
quiet while you get those things articulated. Thanks, Gabby, for being persistent with it.
yeah.
Put our CARES program down, Lori, but as far as East Jeff's CARES program, it looks like I think we probably lost both Tammy and Brett. They should be back there if fire was out. But I know that they also get OCH funding, but he has another under other sources as well, other than
Okay.
just OCH.
And we don't have anybody from OCH as a whole to talk about what their funding
No.
is.
I don't see, and they've got quite a few of our folks that are on here today are also getting funding from that same OCH program.
And have you heard anything about any cuts that they're experiencing? No.
They are not, from what I'm hearing, from what we heard from Miranda. She said that we were pretty safe. But safe is a very valuable term. You know, if you say safe, yes, but is it really safe?
We're safe today.
That's a good word. We're safe today.
Hey, Lori, I wonder, could you paste the general guidance language into our chat? I can't, I can't capture, like I can't cut it from here. And I'd love to put it into a few emails just to make sure.
Yes,
I'll send that off to therapeutic courts and whoever else, if we want to send those questions to OCH, for example.
there you go. Good idea. Thank you for doing that.
Mhm. Oh,
But we
perfect.
can send it to Miranda or to Lorraine from OCH.
Yeah, that would
Thanks.
be great. Yeah, you can just somewhere we can cut and paste it from there and send it out to whoever we think in the behavioral health system needs to have inputs into this and get that information back to Lori. Or copy Lori on the email, I guess.
And folks are able to access those instructions in the chat. Is that true? I'm checking. Okay, great.
Yep, I just was able to cut and paste it, and now I'm putting it into or cut it and paste it into an email. Thank you.
People still working? Okay. Okay, giving a couple more minutes.
Lori, feel free to edit mine. They're a bit Blade Runner / nihilistic. So,
Okay.
total system failure, which frankly feels like could happen with not much surge.
Okay. Are we ready to start looking at it together for a minute here? We're not going to take a lot of time to look at it today because I can see that we still have some key pieces of therapeutic courts that we want to get feedback from, some specifics around the CARES program. But as you look at what people have noted here, do you have questions that you would like to ask of them in this moment? One of the questions I have is around the HUD budget, and that is to ask, when does that become clear? It's considered unlikely to pass, but do we know at what stage we'd actually know? Oops, you might be on mute, Peggy.
Who are you asking this question of, Lori?
Of Peggy Webster. I'm gonna
Okay.
click a thing that asks her to unmute, I think. Or maybe I can't. It's okay, Peggy, if you can't answer. Okay, but that is a question that I have. I will also say that when I talked to Jolene Cron, I didn't actually talk to her. I emailed with her, and she said that budgets had not been signed off on yet, and so she wasn't sure if anything might change. And Heather, maybe you know a little bit.
That is definitely what I've heard as well. Even at the state level, there are some decisions still sitting on the governor's desk that are affecting the ability to ink the budgets.
Yeah, they expect that he'll ink them by, maybe the end of next week or the beginning of the week after. The middle of May is really the target. But we'll see. He's got a lot to weigh and
folks, if I have it so that we can all see each other talking, can you look at the Padlet on your own screens, or is that messing you up? Okay. All right, let's look and just kind of go through quickly what we have here. And if anybody has a question that they would like to ask more detail on, either bring it up now or write it in the comments underneath wherever you see something that might give you a question mark, or more information you'd like to understand. I just love the creative names people have. Does it give them to you, or do you give them to yourself? Okay. Yes, we keep hearing a lot about Medicaid, and we don't know yet, bottom line.
Right.
And
Lori, I can answer now. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself.
thank you. I remembered we had this talk about, how do you say, LIHAE, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead.
So this is the HUD budget, the initial HUD budget that the White House has put into Congress. There was a process, and it's there is no time frame. There is no, it's again unlikely they will do such severe cuts, but anything significant. I mean, at what they've proposed, about 1 million people in the country lose their housing. So it's you just don't know where the Congress is going to go with this stuff. It's more of a call to write your senators, write your representatives, because we would just have a whole lot more people living without housing.
Right. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you for figuring out the audio.
I'm an old person.
Okay, are there any others of these, just because I want to make sure that Heather has enough time to go through the topic we have for her? Are there any pressing questions on any of these? I'll be quiet for a minute so that you can look, that anybody would like to bring forward now. We'll use this as a place to go out and gather more information and to put it into something that I can send back to you, certainly before I'm done with my term here. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, Laurie, we're probably the smallest organization here and have a really modest budget. Heretofore, we received funding state general funds, and there's a story behind those. As I noted in my posting, that constitute about 30% of our budget. And fortunately, after vigorous efforts by our state organization, many legislators and others, that funding was continued for the next biennium. So that will keep us in business. I also added very quickly that I don't think that NAMI National receives any federal funding, but I'm not sure about that. But we're like all the rest of you. We'll just have to wait to see what happens with that. But we do receive a significant portion of our funding from NAMI National through our state organization.
Mm-hmm.
But even though we're small, a little bit of money makes a big difference in what we're about.
Right. Absolutely. Let's see. State. COVID. Lead. Good. Gabby, funding on lead is expected to continue.
It is.
That,
We don't have our amounts yet. We won't have those until the state budget's done, but it's expected to continue.
okay. And the PTPD navigator, I know we're talking about funding here. Is that being interviewed for? Maybe I'm confusing conversations that are happening at the BHC table. That could be what I'm doing, Apple.
We are waiting to hear back about funding from WASPEC, and then as soon as that happens, we can move forward with that. We do have a couple people that are
Candidates.
waiting until we get that.
Ugh.
So we're just waiting to hear back from WASPEC at this point.
Oh, that's the worst. If you've got the person, because it's so hard to get the person. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Gabby. HUD budgets. Gateway to Freedom. Yes, Gabby's Victory Villa, right? That's the name of it. Yeah.
It launched on May 1st.
Excellent.
It's the old Proctor House. So corner of Haynes and 19th.
Great. And you guys had a fundraising event, right?
We are having it this Saturday, 10 to 4, car wash at Penny Saver parking lot. If you want to get your car washed, I'll be out there.
If they would vacuum it out, that would be really good.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll come get my car washed on my way to the other fundraising event, which
There
is
you go.
for Benji Project. It's a busy week.
Yeah.
It's a busy time.
It is.
Okay, so folks can see we've got some more information, particularly from the therapeutic courts, that we want to get in here, and some details around some of the CARES programs. But once we've got everything in, you'll see that we're planning on looking at it. Be patient with me. Oh, you're not even seeing my screen right now. Let's try that again.
Right.
There we go. The thought is that we would sort of go through and identify what's going forward. Is there anything that needs to pause and recalibrate? Are there any emerging priorities, things that are unknown, and the honor and let go if there's some of that. But then at least we're being intentional about looking at everything and deciding if any of these categories need to be looked at more closely. So that is going to be the next step, but it's not the step we're going to get to today. Any questions about that before I hand it over to Heather? All right. Thank you guys for putting so much information into there. That's so hard to collect any other way. And it's nice that we're getting an overview of the county right now. So Heather, I can stop sharing my screen, or I can share it, or you can share yours, or none of the
I
above.
can share mine if you let me
Sure.
do it, and that way I can kind of
I think there's
in control over here. Let's see if I can. Yeah, it looks like I can.
perfect.
How does that look? Does that look like the Urban Rest Stop discussion notes, starting with a list of attendees?
Sure does.
Okay. So, and actually, you know what? I'm going to stop sharing for just a second to just give you a little bit of context. So the idea of an urban rest stop And for anyone who's not familiar with Urban Rest Stop, we're talking about a day center for people experiencing homelessness and unstable housing. It is not a new model. It's something that's being used in other counties, primarily in urban areas, hence the name Urban Rest Stop. There are several of us here, and maybe including you, who have witnessed urban rest stops across over time in other communities. I know Anya from Public Health and Harm Reduction has had a chance to go and visit one or two, and I have as well. And maybe some of you have too. The idea of an urban rest stop has actually kind of been floating around probably in some of your conversations for, I know, at least over a year in my sphere. It was something that I started talking about just, in my involvement in the community and working with the Winter Welcoming Center, just kind of observing what services we had. And then, of course, when I was at Bayside Housing and Services and we were asked to take over this 1-year contract for the Jefferson County Emergency Shelter, it became, even more of a conversation in that context. And so, Anya and I and a few sort of combined meetings started just kind of throwing out the term and talking about it as a potential way to meet some combined needs across the behavioral health and housing spectrums. And then, much to her credit, one of our shared, a person who is experiencing homelessness in the community and really using the services quite a bit. Someone that, we all have served in probably in many of our programs, Maggie, started really bringing the idea up. She started to kind of get a concept of a particular location that she was focusing on and started bringing that particularly to Port Townsend City Council, because the location was within the city of Port Townsend, and a lot to the Board of County Commissioners. And, in inimitable Maggie style, was very consistent in her message and persistent in bringing this forward. I started to really explore it further with some community partners, and we ultimately decided what I was really hearing was there was a lot of energy and interest in exploration of this idea. So we thought, okay, let's really decide whether, how much and whether and what we would do to explore this idea. So I will now share my calendar or my screen here and just kind of briefly describe the very small process that has occurred so far and the invitation to this group to join us in just contemplating this and figuring out if there's enough energy behind it. Is it a real need, and is it something that we want to move forward on together? So I just want to briefly describe, I pulled together with the help of Councilmember Ben Thomas and Maggie and others. We knew that there was enough interest. I had kind of had enough one-on-one conversations with a lot of you and others to say, okay, it's enough interest to let's just start kind of digging into what the idea is and what are the options. Lori attended that meeting as well and very graciously offered to use her superpower of pulling together and kind of capturing the conversation. So that's what you're seeing in front of you is Lori's touch on the notes from the very first meeting, the only meeting that has occurred. And then I want to just briefly talk about and get your feedback about, is this something that you're hearing about in the community? Is it something you're at all interested in further exploring? And do you have feedback about ways or whether we should continue to put any energy into this? And is this something we would like to explore at this table, or folks from this table joining the urban rest stop conversation in a different way. So the people who attended, myself on behalf of the county, Ben Thomas was there from the city council, Apple and Anya were there from public health. I should just go through this so I don't get too lost. Lori attended as the Behavioral Health Consortium lead. Carolyn Lewis is a volunteer with Dove House, particularly the Dove House Closet, and also volunteers otherwise in the community. Talon was there representing Dove House Recovery Cafe as well, because Brian was not able to attend that day. Peggy Webster from OLICAP, Viola Ware also was there from OLICAP. Also representing, of course, Peninsula Housing Authority is one of Peggy's hats. Julia Cochran from the Winter Welcoming Center, Chris and Maggie, both bringing their lived experience and consumer perspective as people experiencing homelessness or unstable housing, and as recovery advocates as well. Steve Evans was there. He's the co-chair of COAST, which is the Community Outreach Association shelter team, which many of you know had many years of running our Jefferson County Emergency Shelter, or at least supporting it in the final years. Jim Novelli, of course, there from Discovery Behavioral Healthcare. Linda Madison from Bayside Housing and Services. Anya, I mentioned before. So that was kind of our initial effort to just bring a core group of people together to discuss. I'm going to share with you really as briefly as I can what we talked about, and then just open this up to any thoughts and talk a little bit about how we might move this forward. So I just really started out with Maggie spending some time to share what her motivations were, what she felt would be an added value for the community from the perspective of what she calls the consumer. And I will just share as an aside that part of my goal has also been to engage people with experience in this world, in how to engage in this in a community conversation like this, how to have an idea, bring it forward, and take leadership in that role. So I really was trying to put her forward in this conversation, and anybody else who wanted to bring that forward. And Chris really stepped up to have a voice in that conversation as well. We started by just identifying needs, and of course, this sort of long list of needs emerged, including basic hygiene and prevention of infectious disease, including addressing ventilation and overcrowding issues that we experience in congregate settings, the need for laundry and lockers, storage, mail services, internet and telephone access, all these kinds of things that can be provided in a day service kind of environment. Case management space, or centralizing the opportunity to connect with services. Clothing, food, supplies, access to living wage opportunities, food storage and cooking access. And I'll just pause here to say we were in no way saying that a project, if it were to happen, would immediately address all of these things, but we were really just in brainstorming mode, saying what are the needs that could be potentially either alleviated or fully addressed by this kind of model. So just to go on, pet accommodations, geographic equity was something that we really were considering. And so you'll see in this brief review that we were addressing, are we talking about a single physical location? Are we talking about a roving service? Are we talking about multiple locations? So we're really in the very, very beginnings of this conversation, but that was identified as a need, geographic equity in itself, and transportation access. So these are all the, kind of the results of our need discussion. We talked in the second half of the meeting about just if this kind of thing were to come about, what would be some of the locations that we could explore, and or concepts like multi-site and mobile service that we would explore. So the Port Townsend Yacht Club is really kind of the nascent location. It's the beginning. It is the idea that Maggie brought forward. I will tell you that since that time, I've, explored that concept in quite a bit of depth and in several meetings with the port. And just this will go further into sort of exploring the viability of any of this. But it's my early estimation that the Port Townsend Yacht Club is actually not a viable location for this. So just kind of put it in the back of your mind, but we're still kind of keeping it on the table as, are there any possibilities there? Mountain View Commons was another one that was brought to the table. We talked about the community centers that already exist, Wilson, Brennan. We talked about Port Townsend, but really identified that is pretty full with services and maybe wouldn't have capacity, but community centers in general. Maybe Peggy is having second thoughts about this, so I won't hit this one too hard, but Peggy brought forward the idea of Haines Street Cottages or the location there. So that's under consideration, and the Caswell Brown site. We even talked a little bit about school facilities and just the fact that they have the school-based health centers there. And is there any nexus around that? Maybe, maybe not. You can see this is very, very early thinking, right? And then the concept of, can we look at the city and county-owned land lists and really assess from there what has access to infrastructure, utilities, what already has existing buildings, et cetera. And then there was a pretty robust conversation in this agenda item around the feasibility of this kind of project at all, and having potentially more feasibility if we've already got a structure that in other words, we don't have to build from the ground up, versus something that we think about that needs a full development process. So there was just a lot of conversation about that. We talked about funding and sustainability, obviously, and there were some ideas thrown on the table, like are there revenue generation possibilities? And that came from an idea that Maggie had around solar panels, but there are some other ideas that can be generated that way around revenue generation of a project like this. So we're thinking about that. We're really not nearly far enough into the conversation to even really consider funding options right now until we really identify, is this a real thing? Can we move it forward? We then talked a little bit just to kind of make sure that everybody at the table really knew the basics of the development process and of development of a project versus an actual capital project, as opposed to a program. So we talked a little bit about that and then folded that into our next steps conversation, which was the end of the meeting. So one of the things that we decided we would do to move forward was to pull together a small group, a smaller group than was there at the table on that day, which would include Oli Cap, Maggie, myself, and Lori and Dove House to, so you can see the names here, to basically develop a set of criteria, some metrics by which we could measure the ideas, right? So this was our first set of ideas. Maybe there would be more at the table, but that ultimately we needed to take a look at all of those and have some way of comparing apples to apples to see. So then Lori offered to document the discussion in general, help prepare some materials. I'll show you that. And the additional thing that we decided we would do is to request those available land lists from the city and the county. So I don't want to, you have a link to this document. I'll just show you, but we won't review here together in any kind of detail, but you'll just know it's here and you can go and look through them. That Lori then went on to a very thorough proposal of ways that we could compare and really assess the viability of a project like this. So this just gives us some tools if we decide to go to pursue it. What we have here is the proposed idea overview. We have a summary table. She basically put the summary of the various different proposals into a table that would allow us to kind of compare them that way. And a few different options for comparing them further, a quick comparison grid that you'll see here, and even a form that would be used to assess these things. In these next steps, we're basically going to take these appendices to that group and kind of fill them out further. This was our first attempt in a small group, Lori Fleming and Peggy Webster and myself, to kind of fill out these tools enough so that people can see how they're used. And then we will take these tools to a larger group, which you may be interested in joining or not, and to further assess them. And then really in that period, start to get feedback from all of you about, do you see a need for this? In what ways does this overlap in a positive way in terms of supporting the work that you're already doing? Does it overlap in ways that you feel are unnecessarily redundant? Those kinds of things I'd like to really just start getting feedback from all of you and others who aren't at this table. So I'm going to stop sharing here, but you can see that there are these appendices that you can further review. Each of the projects is, you can see they're each listed and criteria are explored here. And these are the documents that we would want to then complete and start to compare. So I'm going to stop sharing there and just open up to any of you who were there at the meeting. Several of you were. Any thoughts that you may have, and those of you who weren't at the meeting and are just kind of exploring this concept for the first time, if there are initial thoughts that you'd like us to take into consideration as we move this forward. And if you are interested in participating more fully in this conversation, please also feel free to let me know that or message me afterwards. I'll put my email here into the chat. So I'll just say, yeah, there you go. There's my email. And Apple, do you have something to share?
Just a point of clarification first, and then I'm a comment to make. When I press on the link for Urban Rest Stop notes, I go to the main PowerPoint, but I'm not sure where in the PowerPoint. Maybe there's a hyperlink to those notes, and
maybe I can do it.
I've scanned it a few times. I'm trying to also pay attention, so maybe I missed it. Lori, am I striking sort of the right link?
Here, try this one.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
In Apple, it's a ways down. There are no slide numbers, but it's a ways down. There's a slide titled Urban Rest Stop, and in the middle it says see prior discussion notes. I think that's
it. Or try this one that I just
that one works, Heidi.
Yeah, last one works.
Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, you can use that one.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was following along on the screen, so I was paying attention, even though I didn't have it open on my own computer. I guess let's see. What was my comment? Well, to your question, I was there and I really appreciated being there. It feels to me like it's extraordinary to watch something percolate as recently as when it was sort of coming into view for me. And certainly I'm not ahead of the game on these things, but Heather, when you mentioned it, I don't know, in February, it feels like there has been a great sentiment kind of outpouring in just like 2 months around it. And then simultaneously, whether you knew about it or not, Anya had this opportunity. She'd gone to a conference, I think, and then was able to extend her trip to go to Seattle to check out the Urban Rest Stop there, which is exciting. And she had some really good impressions that she brought back. So I felt like the meeting that we went to just a few short weeks ago, the one that you're describing here, was yeah, it felt energized. It was good to have such different folks at the table. I mean, a lot of folks I'm already very familiar with, but some different people. And of course, I really appreciate your respect for and shepherding of Maggie in terms of really centering and valuing, encouraging and mentoring, if you even call it that. I don't know what your word is, Heather. Her ability and learning to really be fully present in those circumstances and communicate, her experience and her wishes and the data that she combs. I really appreciate that sentiment involved in the conversation. I think one thing that I am starting to percolate on is there are several sort of key elements of resources that I think an urban restaurant could house in one's place, which makes it more accessible and convenient to the people who would utilize the space. And I'm just, the background of saying that for me is we've had some funds that have oscillated around being able to dedicate them because we chose to helping create laundry vouchers simultaneously. Our friends, at Dove House have been also having a kitty of funds that go to this same purpose. But, these sorts of funds for laundry vouchers, they're really fluctuative. They're not very deep. They kind of come and go. We have to keep kind of scrounging for them, which is not sustainable. And I don't know that it ultimately knits together as well as us partners would like it to. We've tried our best, and we continue to have those types of funds here and there. But, if this comes together as a collaborative approach where there's maybe multiple orgs that contribute one or several pieces of this bigger design, I would love to see that. I think that's a kind of a magical design. And I don't think it's beyond us, the people at this table, and then some. So I'm kind of feeling inspired. I don't know that it will happen in the way that we imagine it right now, but I feel ready and resilient to kind of see where it goes and continue to show up. So anyway, thank you.
Great. Thank you for those comments, Apple. And I'm going to call on David and then Matt. And in the meantime, I just want to note, I don't know if Kelly is behind that screen there or having to do some other things, but I just want to just kind of raise the conversation, and note Kelly was not there at that table because I didn't call her, but just the recognizing that OWL 360 is effectively or has effectively already created this kind of day center model for youth, and that even though I think this community of providers really recognizes sometimes the need to keep those adult services maybe a little separate from the youth services. And at the same time, I think we can have a robust conversation about how youth can be served. So I'm really interested in that nexus as well. David, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting your work, and I think it's great. And I'm always a big believer that all projects are better the more people you involve in them, even though they take a little more time. And I'm excited to see what this turns out to be. I do really, I would put my vote down for geographic equity. Transportation, as you know, is the hugest challenge in our county. I like the idea of the community centers. I also wonder if there's opportunity to start to engage with some of the leaders at public health and the sort of water quality environmental health specialists, Mike Dawson or Laura Gasantaro, to start to think about, we're going to use a lot of water, make a lot of waste maybe, or gray water, and what are some creative solutions for that? Could this be some sort of gypsy van that travels the county and returns somewhere to put its gray water back into a system that it gets recycled or something? I just think could be super innovative and cool. When I look at the floats that are created for the festival, I forget what it's called, where they race downhill across tennis balls into the water.
Yeah.
Creativity around. So,
is that called the running of the balls?
Yes, excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Thank you, David. That's great. Matt?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that presentation and the story about it. Um, I love the idea, and I'm always in favor of creative solutions. And I'm happy to participate, or, the hospital is always a source of potentially some funding. And so be happy to champion it at the hospital board when the time is right.
Great.
And I mean, I've just had a couple encounters recently. I mean, I know most people here know there's a homeless camp down there by the roundabout, um, by the social services. And I just sort of randomly met one of the guys that lives in the woods down there, and we struck up a friendship. And he took me, to his place in the woods there. And so I've never actually walked through the camp because, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to seem like a tourist. But, he gave me a tour of the infrastructure that they have down there. They got a dumpster. I mean, and it's just sort of, I mean, seeing if we're going to allow this camp to be here, I mean, why can't we just give it more infrastructure? It just made me want to, like, they're going to live here in a shanty town. So anyways, I'm in favor of infrastructure and solutions. And so thank you for bringing this, and let me know what I can do to help.
You bet. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. I know the infrastructure question has been raised for that community. So, I do feel like in some ways, there is also an opportunity to kind of touch on those overall advocacy issues with a project like this. It's, kind of almost a byproduct, but a really important one.
Heather, if I may, will this be open 24 hours a day, or what's the?
We don't know. We're not that far into the conversation. Anya, your experience of the Seattle Urban Rest Stop, was it just a day service, correct?
Just a day service, like a
Yeah.
9 to 5 situation. That's probably what it would be here too.
Yeah.
It sounds like a dramatically enhanced version to some extent of the warming shelter.
Yes, and I actually wrote that note. So I wanted to make that really ultimately clear to this group, and that is that Julia Cochran, who really is, has been the ongoing lead for the Winter Welcoming Center model, is very on board. And the idea is that Winter Welcoming, we wouldn't do this in addition to the Winter Welcoming Center, that this would evolve. This would be an evolution of the Winter Welcoming Center, unless we went with an entirely mobile model that somehow doesn't serve Port Townsend in the same way that Winter Welcoming Center does. But right now, the idea is that this would be an evolution of the Winter Welcoming Center to provide more service.
I was just going to respond to Patrick. Patrick, we should ask the people that need it when its hours should be, and maybe that's later in the afternoon because they're busy with appointments trying to get themselves linked to services during the daytime. Who knows? I think we should be open to what the community who is going to use this suggests that they would find most helpful.
Thank you, Doctor. That's absolutely needs to be a mantra. And it's amazing how easy it is to forget it. I just, I've been doing this work for a little while now, and I still, you get going on an idea and start planning. And so I really just want this idea to stay in the community engagement place for as long as it takes for it to really be fully fomented in that way. And at the same time, we're facing a time with shelter services potentially facing some real funding losses, and a lot of the services that you all have been providing. Here we are coming out of this funding conversation that we just had. So I also hope that looking at this project can be a continuation of what has been happening at this BHC table for quite some time, an evolution of that conversation, which moves into how can we leverage each other and really create financial efficiencies, service provision efficiencies, by working on a project or multiple projects like this together. That and hopefully take load off of what you're already doing, and or ultimately the goal is to provide better service than we are currently able to provide by working together. Any other closing thoughts? Again, my email is there in the chat and easily found on the county's website. And I just really welcome thoughts and any, including dumb idea, Commissioner, that's okay too. I really want to know where this community of providers stands on an idea like this before we put a whole lot of energy into exploring it further. And so far, what I'm hearing fairly overwhelmingly is it's worth exploring. So I think we want to walk that line of engaging all the voices early on to craft the direction versus taking so long to have a conversation about something so that we never actually do anything, right? We don't want to go that far, but I think this early work is really important to make sure that we craft something that has full buy-in from the experts, and those experts are you and the people with lived experience of homelessness and unstable housing. And actually, even those who are outside of, experiencing homelessness and unstable housing, there may be some who are experiencing behavioral health concerns, but are even housed that could use this service. So hopefully we can get to the next part of the conversation, and I really want to make sure that you're all at the table if you want to be. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was, it's good to have the whole conversation all in one place where folks can see it. And remember, anybody who's interested in talking more, learning more, contributing, Heather's email is there in the chat and available on the county website. Quickly, I'd like to turn our attention just to, as we look ahead, I know that we've got the BHC, BHAC MOU that's been in the works. Apple, would you like to say anything about that? I know it's in county legal.
I think what I'd like to say for the purposes of right now is we have some workshops among the subcommittee of the BHAC that's meant to deal with the opioid settlement funds, and there has been some delays in various aspects of moving that along, and that is on me and because of staffing shortage for running the BHAC table, which I'm getting closer to working something out. But a few things had to happen that I didn't know were going to happen to help some funding fall into place to even be able to truly confidently advertise that role, because we want to hire a full-time behavioral health coordinator within the health department, which we have not had. We had Anna McHenry for a long time, but she did multiple jobs. That was just one portion of her job. So anyway, I appreciate people's patience with me and with that, and all the members of the committee, the BHAC. The MOU has, between Lori and I initially, with some help from Bradley Banks, that was in January and February, or late last December, and then some stalled time, but some more thinking on how the MOU should be crafted. And now with sort of this insertion of a change potentially in sort of the dynamic or the thrust of the BHAC, which I wouldn't have foretold, 2 months ago when I was deep in the writing and engaging with Lori on how we might even consider proposing an MOU, because we want to make the process of creating that MOU where we have shared values and we have cross-pollination and we have transparency around data from each table that helps us do better with the knowledge that we have in those spheres that we have. In a way, I mean, for what it's worth, the delay is, is a bit grumbly for me inside, but as well as life would have it, there's some changes that are just happening right now that we wouldn't have foreseen had we kind of sealed the deal on that 2 months ago. And so we would have had to maybe go back to the drawing board. So It's where it's at. It needs to be buttoned up. We're going to have 2 subcommittee meetings between now and the June BHAC meeting. I think what I might do is I'll take, you know, the lion's share of what has been already sort of, you have good gerunds that you use, Lori, gurgitated, cogitated, all of the sort of work that we've done in sort of other spaces, and you've gracefully brought back to this table for people to consider. And that was, I think, the last time the folks on this table saw anything about the MOU was in the former meeting, which was 3 months ago.
February. Mhm.
February, right. So a little behind in buttoning that up, but I think what I'll do is just, you know, for the time being, I'll take, you know, what contributions the BHC has given to the notion of the MOU. I don't know that we would post Lori really look at the collaboration between the tables any differently, but I could be wrong about that. And then the BHAC members, the subcommittee for the opioid settlement funds, they really need to dig in a little deeper, and that's what we're going to be doing in May, leading up to the June meeting.
Great. Thank you, Apple. Any questions about that? Okay. In terms of governance, I've just put a link in your package to where we're at. It seems wise to wait now until folks sort of know what goes forward before we spend too much more time on finalizing those things, but they're at a point that they can be finalized, I think, pretty easily in a vote from the voting membership.
Great.
So, sharing my screen quickly. I took this picture yesterday, and it made me think a bit about this table and how each agency, all the initiatives, all the programs that were done, it's like each of them is a little bit of a mushroom cap, and some of them are, you know, they're smaller, they've been mushed, they're looking tired, or they're just barely cutting up through the dirt, but they're all rooted in this shared soil. And so I want you guys to know that even as I'm stepping back from tending what is the visible cluster of all of these mycelium, that underneath it there is a whole spreading, connecting, enabling new growth network that is going on beyond what any of us can control or predict. And it's a living system that we all together have nurtured. And it's a network of care, and it's fragile and strong and complex and interconnected. And no matter who of us leaves the table, the work still continues. And it's because of the work that we all did together here. And I would like you to know, as I say in this slide, that I recognize that this table's strength is all of you bringing your leadership and your insight and your shared commitment forward. And I am really excited to watch and see what this grows and evolves into beyond this meeting. And I am honored to have worked with you all for as long as I have. And thank you for all of the great comments that you've shared today and the many times that you guys have all been endorsing of the work that we do here. And I wish you well. And I think I'm letting you go 2 minutes early.
Lori, I hope you get a chance to look at all the comments in the chat before you close it down. There's some lovely comments there that people have been leaving. And I just want to end with one last thought, which is that a few of us have gotten together to talk through potential next steps and thinking about that. So ideas are welcome around that, and we will be actively soliciting your input with regard to what next for BHC in the form of a survey that's going to come your way. We're crafting a very, very short survey that will just have a few kind of targeted questions around what do you want to see, what have you valued here, and what do you want to see continue, new ideas about how the BHC can serve this behavioral health provider community. So keep an eye out for that. And really, we hope that you will take just a few minutes to really provide some targeted feedback and that will help us to move forward together. And Lori, your legacy is strong and your shoes will be hard to fill. But thank you so much for everything you've done to move this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.